I want to start by maybe having to step back just a little bit and look at the world around us. You know, so many times we come to these conferences and we think about all the things we do back at the ranch, back at the farm, and from a production standpoint, and getting in all the nuts and bolts of that. And that's all really, really important stuff, right? But, you know, sometimes it's good to take ourselves out of that business for a second and just look out at some other business models. Maybe some things we don't think about every day, about how some of these other businesses around us are changing and how fast things are changing around us. I've got 4 companies up there, and every one of those you could have a case study on how they have changed the business that they are in, right? How many of you know Uber? All right. It's funny because I've been using Uber as an example for about 12 months. And when I started, how many of you knew Uber like 12 months ago? A couple hands. More and more hands are coming. Do you realize they're the largest transportation entity now in the world? They're bigger than GM and Ford. They don't own anything, right? They just put people together to have rides. And now they're impacting the food business. Uber Eats. Anybody heard of Uber Eats? Yeah. They are changing. When we talk to our restaurant partners, they are now partnering with Uber. So basically you probably can't do it here in Canadian Texas yet, okay? But in the larger major metro areas, right, you can get on your Uber app and you can figure out what food you want to have and they'll just bring it to your house, right? We're working with some of our food service distributors that work with restaurants, sell to restaurants. They're using Uber now as a courier service. And they're already starting to talk about where things are going to go when we have driverless cars. Okay, so just think about the transportation business. How would you like to own a taxi cab company today, right? The business model's changing. Netflix, right? How long ago? Netflix, Blockbuster were competing in the entertainment business. One of them's bankrupt and one of them has revolutionized how we do things today, right? They're producing their own things. My kids don't watch, I don't know, I've got 2 teenagers in my house. I don't know if my teenagers are like your teenagers if you have them, okay? They're great kids. They don't watch TV anymore. They watch on their laptop or watch on their mobile devices, right? We watch entertainment. Entertainment is delivered to us differently. Facebook, the largest media company today, right? They don't own anything. They don't own anything. And Amazon, wow. If you're in the retail business today, every meeting starts with a discussion around Amazon, right? And online grocery shopping, online, Best Buy today is just a show place for electronics. I go in, I look at what it is, and then I order it on Amazon at the cheapest price, right? And it's delivered to my house. I don't even have to load it in my car, right? And now Amazon Prime, Amazon Fresh, all these. So Amazon Fresh, you guys know Amazon Fresh now, so you can start ordering your groceries. It can deliver it to you with a drone, right? I just read research that said 31% of consumers in this coming year are going to order groceries online. 31%. It was 19% last year. That is incredible growth. Right? So I share that, and you say, what the heck does all that have to do with the beef business? I use this, some of these actually really do have impact to the beef business, but I think sometimes we've got to step back and we think, man, we're in this traditional business. It's probably what the taxi cab company said too, right? That's what the grocery store owners said too. We're in a traditional business. What's technology? How's this thing going to change that much? I'm going to tell you, business is changing, right? We just heard talk about precision agriculture and GPS. I tell you, growing up farming in central Illinois, we didn't have that. You actually had to steer the tractor, right? Okay, so things are changing. You guys know that. Sometimes it's good maybe just to remind ourselves. I'll give you just a little bit. Again, it's about perspective, and I want to share you a perspective of what I do every day and the team that I work with, what we focus on. We've been talking a lot about production, right? All morning about production. I'm going to talk about what we do today is about demand. Our job every day when we get up and go to work is to create demand for that brand. That's why we exist as an organization, Certified Angus Beef, LLC. That is what we're about. We're about creating demand. And ultimately, that demand we create, the mission is to create more demand for registered Angus cattle. That's why we were established back in 1978. The story is a great story, as Andy shared with you. It actually goes back to the mid-'70s when a couple Angus producers and actually, as the story goes, one actually went to Chicago, and he was a businessman, but he also had Angus cattle, and he had a steak that was labeled Angus, and it wasn't any good. And he said, that can't be. He said, that does not represent our breed well. And of course, it was at a time, great ideas a lot of times are born out of times of desperation. And that was a bit of a desperate time. Angus breeders were losing market share. And he said, if we penned a letter to the Angus Association, said we need to have a set of standards, a set of specifications. And we need to have a brand, a trademark that we protect and we track. And ultimately, if we create demand for that, it'll create more demand for our cattle. Now, that doesn't sound like a horribly novel idea today, right? We understand branding, right? But in 1976, when the letter was penned, that was kind of novel, especially for beef, especially for commodity. So that is what we do even still today. We operate as a not-for-profit. We're a solely owned organization, solely owned by the American Angus Association. We have a mission statement of increasing the demand for registered Angus cattle. That's who we are. That's why we exist. That trademark up there is all we own. We own a brand, a trademark. It's federally registered. It's internationally registered. And that is what we own. The business model is such that we license the use of that trademark out to packers and processors. They pay us a revenue when they sell pounds under that trademark. We then take those dollars that come into our organization and we reinvest it into brand marketing. We reinvest it with food service. We reinvest it with retail. We reinvest in, I'll share some things that we're doing on the changing some of the consumer perceptions around beef and how we raise beef. Okay, that's what we do. At the end, the not-for-profit is simply at the end of the year we try to spend everything we bring in revenue. So we're trying to grow, right? We're trying to grow. It gives us more resources to be able to go out and create more brand equity. Ultimately, growing more demand for a CAB animal, growing demand for those cattle that qualify, and trickling back to you. Last year we sold, we partner with a little over 17,000 companies. So these, when I say licensees, we use that term around a lot. Those are folks that maybe are packers and processors. There may be food service distribution companies. There may be restaurants. There are grocery stores, both here domestically and around the world. We did sell the brand into over 50 countries last year. I'll share with you just a little bit in a handful of slides here how important that global marketplace is to the brand's ability to grow demand today and absolutely in the future. Andy referenced last year we crossed 1 billion pounds. And within our shop, that was kind of a big deal just because we'd had this goal out there of hitting 1 billion pounds by 2020 was actually the goal. We got there a little early. It's simple. It's a number, right? It's only a number, but it is kind of a significant one and one we've had fun talking about. And ultimately, the whole thing about this is creating more demand for the product that last year alone, the packers paid $50 million back to producers on grids for cattle that qualified for the brand, right? That ultimately creates a pull-through for Angus genetics. That's what the whole purpose of this is. So again, I share with you, this is the perspective. This is my bias, right? When I talk about the premium beef cattle market, when I talk about the restaurant and food service business, I can tell you it's a lot from this lens, but I think there's a lot of trends that we're seeing that apply to the entire beef industry. To give you some idea, we certify today somewhere around 80,000 carcasses a week, okay? A little over 4 million head a year certified into certified Angus beef. And so that gives you somewhere around 15% of fed cattle today in the U.S. are going into certified Angus beef. So the program has drastically grown. I had the good fortune of coming to work at CAB about 17 years ago. Back then we used a statistic, less than 8% of all cattle qualify. We've had to revise that statistic several times, which is a great thing. That's a great thing because today it's more around about 15% of all fed cattle. So I give you a little, first off, because sometimes we get this a lot, especially those on the cow-calf side that don't maybe live in the fed cattle world every day and don't think about grids or think about how this packer to feeder interaction works. So I guess I walk you through the steps of, is this guy certified Angus beef? Can he be sold as certified Angus beef? Oh, question right now is maybe. We don't know, right? And I hear a lot of times, well, he's black, so he's certified Angus beef. I promise you that's not it, okay? I promise you that's not it. That's a step in the process, but that's not it. The first step is we actually have to license the packers, okay? Not every packer is licensed to use our trademarks, and there's a lot of things that go along with that trademark agreement. Okay, but today we work with about 85% of the North American fed cattle packing base. So we work with all the big packers. We work with a number of regional ones as well. We've even started working with some smaller ones. This little ER Bulliants, I doubt you've ever heard of them. They're in central Ohio. They're actually not far from our office. We have a culinary center now that we're probably their biggest customer because we bring carcasses from that little plant in to use for education and things. And so we work with big plants. We work with small plants. Again, about 85% of the fed cattle packing base is licensed and producing CAB. Step 2 is they have to qualify for Angus-type. USDA, as defines Angus-type today, is they've got to be predominantly solid black. So these two animals there, as I use as examples, they would qualify. So how this works is they go into the licensed packing plant, and that's the first step. They evaluate the animal if it has a predominantly solid black hide, and if they do, they get an A stamp. Now, all that does is that means that qualifies them to be considered for another Angus branded beef program. We're one of those. There's many others out there within the packing plants. No grid, and I think this is important, no grid premiums are paid for just getting the A stamp. Okay, it's really the next step when we get to the carcass grading side of things. This is I'd tell you where the rubber meets the road, right? And I think it's the set of specifications that have been designed around the program to create quality, to create consistency, that have allowed the brand to be successful and to grow like it has. So there's a number of carcass specifications. I won't bore you with these, okay? They're really important, but I won't bore you with them. But the one I would tell you that is most important to you, okay, as cattlemen, and I'd tell you it's most important to you if we're just talking to you as consumers, is that first one, a modest or higher degree of marbling. It's the hardest one to hit, okay, for cattlemen. It's the one that has the most economic signals tied to it in our marketing system, and it's the one that delivers the biggest, from an eating experience standpoint, it's the one that's the most important up there. So it's bolded for a reason. All 10 of those are important, but I tell you that marbling level is critical. I also point out we do have a couple what we term brand extensions. We do have a Certified Angus Beef Prime, where the specifications are the same here, except for they have to be prime level marbling, okay? And we also have a natural line. And natural is cattle raised without any antibiotics, without supplemental growth hormones, and been fed on a vegetarian diet. Okay, I still try not to giggle when I say vegetarian diet, but that's what our marketing people want us to say, so that's the term we use, right? I'll tell you, that is, you know, natural gets, I don't want to send a mixed message here. I'm all about whatever the market says it wants, right? If there's an opportunity for us to produce that as cattlemen, if there's a business opportunity that makes sense, I think it's one we need to pursue. I'd tell you, we're really poor natural marketers, okay, as an organization. We got a bunch of animal scientists and meat scientists running around there that we position it as, it's a choice. You like Cabernet, I like Merlot, but we're not going to tell you that this natural one's better. And we're sure not going to tell you it's more sustainable. We're going to tell you the truth about these two products and how they were raised. Both were raised responsibly, okay? And as a result, our natural line has continued to grow a little bit, but it's less than 1% of our total business, okay? And it's been relatively flat for the last handful of years. So that's my little bit of commentary on the natural market. We hear an awful lot about it. It makes an awful lot of noise. We have a lot of discussion around local, okay? Locally produced, sustainably produced. All these terms that folks, especially at the food service level, and I'm not so much consumers, but we're talking to chefs. Oh man, they've got a lot of ideas out there about you get any chefs in the room? Okay, good. They're kind of like lawyers. You always check first if there's any in the room before you start talking about them. But you know, chefs are artists, right? They're artists, especially the really, really good ones. And a lot of them have some pretty strong opinions on what they know or what they think they know. And so it always makes for some really fun and interesting discussions to talk through some of this stuff of what they think they want, what they think is valuable, and what is a reality. This is what sales have looked like of the brand over the last handful of years. Again, we've really experienced some tremendous growth, and we've done that. And I guess what the message to this is not, well, boy, look at us, we've grown, okay? The message here is a premium beef program, the most expensive product that we essentially produce, okay? Essentially, the most expensive product that we produce as cattlemen has grown substantially in the last handful of years, when in times we've had record high beef prices, we've had recessionary times both domestically and globally, okay, and we're continuing to grow at record pace. Okay, that tells us that we've got a pretty good product, okay, that consumers truly, truly want. The little dip there, just FYI, that was BSE, right? Mad cow. That's when the borders closed. Again, speaks to the importance and the impact of global trade for sure. 8% of our total business in 2003 was into Japan. That market obviously went away overnight, and there went that 8%. So it's dynamic when you're in the global marketplace. It can be a little bit risky. So we work to really make sure we've got a broad breadth of companies or countries that we're working with, and try to be as diverse as possible. You know, when I think about beef demand, and I guess this is a message that when we're out talking and working with retailers. So again, we've got about 135 people on our team. I'm one of the really, really lucky ones that I get to come talk to cattlemen, okay? There's only a couple of us in our company that really have that focus. I also work with the packers, and I spend a fair amount of time actually working on I say the other end, food service, retail, with our culinary communities. But the thing that we hear, the rest of our team that's day in, day out there working with our retailers, out there working with our food service partners, domestically and internationally, it's all the same in terms of what we hear about beef, okay? And this, what we term, or look at and think about, is the price to value relationship of beef. Look how this has changed over just the last handful of years. Think about the consumer. We're all in the business, right? We all understand beef and why it got high. Okay, why it's been getting high, and why anyone would even want to eat chicken, we don't understand, right? But think about it as a normal, everyday consumer in Dallas or somewhere, right? When they walk up to the meat case and they're thinking about buying a protein for their family that night, right? Because they are just now, it's 4 o'clock and they're just now thinking about dinner, right? So this is your average consumer. Think about that price-value relationship when they look at that boneless, skinless chicken breast and the beef offering, okay? Think about the difference in price that was there in 2000 versus the difference in price that's there today. Are we asking that consumer to spend a whole lot more on our product today than we, compared to the other proteins, than just a handful of years ago? Absolutely, okay? Is their expectation of beef therefore a lot higher? Absolutely. Now, the good thing is, they keep buying it, right? Demand continues to be really strong, but this is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. I'm not worried about becoming lobster, right? I hear that sometimes. Oh, we're going to get too expensive. We're going to be a luxury food, okay? We're the protein of celebration. I love that spot on the plate, okay? I still don't believe that anybody's going to go out and celebrate a graduation with a chicken breast, okay? They're going to have a steak, okay? You take your wife out for an anniversary dinner and you get her a pork chop, you got problems, okay? Right? Beef is still the protein of celebration. We own the center of the plate. And now when you look at the resurgence of ground beef and premium ground beef today, okay, the expectation is a lot higher. So we just need to think about that. We're in the cow-calf business for the most of us in this room. And we don't probably think about that calf after they get on the trailer and head on down the road, right? Or we dropped them off at the auction market, whatever the case might be. But we need to. Okay, we cannot lose sight of that. If we do, okay, and we run out of this, okay, if our point of difference is no different than chicken and pork, okay, guess what happens to the price of our calves then? Right? So we got to keep this thing, we got to keep quality in mind, and we got to keep it front and center. The other thing I'll share with you, and it's just because it's been pretty high on our radar screen lately. You know, we tend to have this idea, and especially everybody in this room, well, consumers are always going to eat beef. It's American. They're going to eat beef, right? It's not a question of if they will eat beef. It's just how much and what cuts, right? No, there is becoming more of a question of if they will eat beef. We've been dealing with more and more protein-based, plant-based, there's where I was trying, plant-based protein alternatives is a really hot trend right now within the culinary world. Okay, we just dealt with a burger build for the Google corporate campus. Okay, this was certified Angus beef, ground beef patty that was going into the Google corporate campus. But their spec was they wanted it to be 66% beef and 33% or 34% mushroom. Okay, now I'm okay with that if you just really like a mushroom burger. Actually, we sampled the product. It was pretty good. Okay, but why were they doing it? And I'm even okay if they say they need to make it a little cheaper, because we're definitely doing that too. They believe that was a far more sustainable option, okay? Plant-based proteins in a lot of people's minds are more sustainable, more responsible, okay? This whole idea of plant-based proteins, Tyson just bought a company that is plant-based proteins. Tyson bought a plant-based protein company, okay? So just pay attention, okay? Make sure we're aware. If we've got a product that does not meet and exceed consumer expectations, they do have other options, okay? And I think sometimes we'll catch ourselves and get caught in that rut of, well, they're always going to buy beef. Not sure they always will. Now, I'm incredibly bullish on beef demand, incredibly bullish. I think it's going to be good for a long, long time. I think the quality resurgence of this industry is something to be applauded by you as cattlemen, and I think it's going to serve us well for a long, long time, but we better just not have blinders on, right? Okay, enough preaching on that one. So this is something that, and some of you took meat science maybe when you were in school, and you learn this. Beef is complicated. And if you get pork, there's no grading system to pork. There's no grading system to chicken. But beef, we've made it as complicated as we can make it. We've got select and choice and prime and brands and all these cuts, gross and ground beef and steaks, and it is complicated to the consumer. But the one thing that data has always proven true, and this is where that modest degree of marbling specification came from the brand, back in 1978 when the meat scientists that were asked to put the specs together, they knew this. They said, when you increase marbling, you increase consumer satisfaction, right? It has been proven time and time again, and yet there's still cattlemen that want to argue with me that says marbling doesn't matter, okay? I promise you, if you go into Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and say marbling doesn't matter, and they bring you out a select steak, you'll be upset, okay? It does matter, and it's not to say you can't have a good select steak, but time and again, from a consistency standpoint, as you increase marbling in this product, it increases consumer satisfaction. When we talk to restaurateurs, they don't want to deal with return steaks. When a grocery store is trying to make their place in the market, okay, and grow market share, guess what? HEB, and we don't work with HEB, and they're an incredible retailer, okay? As they fight for market share with the Walmarts, are they going to do it on the cost of a can of Campbell's soup or a box of Cheerios? No. They're going to do it with improving the quality of their produce, increasing the quality of their meat case, okay? And how have they done that? They know this. They want highly marbled product, and that's why the market has done what it's done. Okay, it's rewarded these higher marbling levels of beef because they're worth more on the other end of this. So to give you just a little bit of a snapshot of what this looks like today for a packer, I put 3 carcasses, and I use this, I made this a made-up example, but 3 900-pound carcasses hanging there in a cooler at a packing plant. If one of them, the one on the left is select, the one in the middle is choice, okay, and there's low choice, average choice, high choice. But we're going to say it's low choice because that's what we term commodity choice. And then the one on the right is Certified Angus Beef or a premium choice, upper 2/3 choice program. Okay, if you go to the cutout values, which is reported every week in different ways, but it's basically they take all the cuts that the packers are selling and they roll that up to tell you what the carcass value is worth. It's called the cutout. Okay? If you use last year's cutout values in a 900-pound carcass and compared that to a 900-pound select carcass, if it's choice to the packer, it's worth $100 more. If it makes it into Certified Angus Beef, it's $222 more than select. This is just using average values. Okay? Average values. If you bump it up to prime, you can throw another $100 on there. That's why grids are built the way they are. Because this is what the packer's dealing with when they're selling the product. Now, you heard Troy talk this morning about packers having more leverage in the future, right? Right. Okay, so what happens when they get more, where do they make more money? Well, they make it on the higher end, depending on how they buy it, okay? They may need to discount that select carcass more. And we tend to see those things happen in our marketplace. So, again, it's the market signal that's being sent from the demand that's being created. It's ultimately, there's only one new dollar in this whole thing, and it comes from the consumer, right? And this is where the consumer, they've said they want higher quality products in our export markets domestically and internationally. This just gives you a little idea. I feel like Garth Brooks with this headpiece up here. I'm going to lose it. this gives you a little idea of where that value comes from. Because I know we hear this sometimes, it's like, well, it's all in the ribs and strips. And then everything else, we don't care about quality. The consumer doesn't care about quality. The food service operator doesn't care about quality. That's not actually true at all. Okay, we get a lot of our premium. So this is a % premium over choice. But what I put up here was comparing 2010 to last year for us. And what we've seen, and I think what's significant, the round, okay, just a handful of years ago brought about the CAB round cuts brought about a 2% premium over choice. Okay, this last year was 5%. The chuck a couple years ago was 2%. This last year was 6%. Okay, so we're seeing growth in briskets. We're seeing growth in chucks and rounds. The entire carcass is being demanded in these higher quality cuts. So again, I think a real opportunity when we think about driving value and adding value to the entire animal. So we're talking about growing demand, and we think about what we do every day in building a brand, because that's what we think about, right? Is how do we build this brand? And I say, if you think about a brand's value proposition, there's the parts of it that I term as kind of the functional parts, right? It has to work, right? Harley Davidson makes a good motorcycle, right? It has to work. If it didn't work, if it didn't start, right, then it probably wouldn't have ever been grown into a great brand. But think about the emotional part of the Harley Davidson brand, right? People tattoo this brand on their skull, right? They dress up in the garb. They don't maybe even own the motorcycle, but they wear the brand on. It's amazing how emotional people are with brands. We have a society today, a consumer today, that is very, very loyal to brands. Positive can be very positive or negative. And look how quick you can lose equity in a brand. United Airlines. Man, you talk about a brand crisis right now. Total brand crisis right now. And they're like our #1 carrier out of Cleveland, so I have to fly them all the time. So I just, get ready every time I guess I'm going onto the plane now, right? But brands today, have so much value, but man, so quickly we can destroy that value, we can lose that value. But so much of that is emotional, right? There's got to be an emotional tie to these brands. And I think as Certified Angus Beef brand marketers, for the first probably 15 years I was in the organization, we talked an awful lot about the functional part of it. We talked about our 10 science-based carcass specifications. That's why this product is better. But what we're learning is that's important. That's really important. That's kind of table stakes now. But what's the emotional connection to the brand? So we're now telling more about the rancher story and the personal connection, the people behind this brand that grow the emotional component. And now we've got this new one, right? It's this environmental, social responsibility thing, right? Look at what some of these brands are investing in their image about how responsible they are. And so again, not to bore you with brand marketing, but it's a very different place out there today as you're looking at owning a brand, protecting a brand, and growing a brand. You've got to think about all of these things. And that is something, again, as an organization that we try to be very, very conscious of. So on the emotional side, this is what we term our heritage trade campaign that we launched a couple years ago now. And it has a very different look and feel to it than what we were doing before that. It speaks to the heritage of the brand, the fact that we're owned by cattlemen. What we found is we had brands out there that were probably telling a better story about their brand than what we were, and they were for-profit companies owned by packers, right? We're like, we got actually a really good story here. We're actually owned by cattlemen. We're a not-for-profit. Let's talk about those people that are behind the brand and what they do. And obviously it aligns with that consumer that we know today wants to better connect with where their food comes from. They want that comfort that there's people back there with shared values, same values they have, right, that are raising this product. So our imagery and everything that goes along with it has changed a little bit to build more on that emotional component. Social media has become, such an important part of a brand marketing approach today. Especially when we look at the folks we're trying to influence at the food service level, the chefs. I mean, these chefs are you know, they're always on Instagram, they're always on Twitter. That's how you communicate with them. That's how you build brand loyalty with them. And so we've got a great opportunity, because it's relatively inexpensive, to reach those people, and with all this imagery, okay, with true stories, to be more transparent in what's going on, to really, again, grow that emotional connection to the brand. And we've seen this be very, very effective, and we're excited to do more of it and grow that in the future. Something that we did, and I like to, we did this is the Certified Angus Beef Culinary Center, but I'll tell you, we promote beef. This is the Beef Center in all reality. We talk about the brand, obviously. But so much of what we do at this culinary center, we bought a restaurant a handful of years ago. It was right next to the office. Steve Olson, sitting in the back, was part of our board of directors. That, I don't know, maybe you thought we were crazy, maybe you guys, but they had the confidence and had the vision around, we need to invest, and because there's a real need out there for folks that want to learn more about beef. And not just, I mean, consumers do, but the folks that are out there selling our product every day, which is hard for us to imagine, but there's people out there selling our product every day. Food service, Cisco reps, US Foods, Benny, Keith, they're out there selling our product. They know what they know what the code on a box of tenderloins are, but they likely have never seen a carcass. Okay, they don't probably know where that came from, and I'm generalizing. Some of them are really, really sharp and good and know this stuff, but a lot of them don't. And there's a huge, huge need we found to do education, both at the grocery store, we term retail, and at food service. So we built this, opened this culinary center, and it's honestly, it's hard for us to think today, 5 years later, what on earth we would do without it. It's become kind of the focal point of what we do from a brand positioning and brand marketing standpoint. We bring chef groups in, and we've got probably 3 to 5 groups a week that are going through this. We bring food service groups. We've had folks from all over the world come in. And why I say it's as much about promoting beef. Part of this, part of nearly every tour is to go out to a farm. And we're in Northeast Ohio, right? So I can't go show them large-scale feedlot. I can't go show them large-scale anything. You know, I show them 25 cows, and most of these folks are going, wow, 25 cows, right? So, but we can go out and talk about the diversity of beef cattle production. We can talk about what you folks do each and every day. That's become just a staple of our culinary center, and it's again, I don't remember, I don't know, we've taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of groups out and people out, and I don't remember one person that saw something and came back more skeptical, right, than when they were out there. And so again, just being able to show folks how we fabricate carcasses, how we raise cattle, it's just been a great resource. We've got 2 full-time chefs there. We have 6 full-time chefs on staff now. Influencing the influencers is where we focus. And then we just take a lot of groups out. We just took a group of chefs out to Omaha for 3 days we take them to ranches, we take them to feed yards. We do, again, countless, and Steve and Ginger have hosted a number of these for us, and we take countless groups out. And again, we don't have certain farms or feed yards that are only producing certified Angus beef, right? We take them out and say, this is the beef community. This is the beef supply chain. These are the folks raising your cattle and are also raising certified Angus beef. So I love this picture. This is what happens when you take foodies out to a feed yard. They got to get a selfie. Okay, this is a guy from, I think, Latin America for sure, but maybe Mexico. But I mean, this thing went then on Facebook. Guess what he did, right? He took it, and then what happens? It goes on his Instagram, and it goes on his Facebook, and it goes on his Twitter, and he talks about the wonderful experience and the great people he met. And again, one at a time. Again, it's back to the starfish story, right? One at a time. These things have impact, and they make a difference. So we do a lot of these, we invest in a lot of these, and we think they're really, really good for long-term beef demand. I want to touch on global, because I think that's something as cattlemen I know we need to always keep conscious and be aware of, and obviously plenty of headlines around trade agreements and negotiations and the global marketplace we work in. But I share you a little bit of perspective from the brand standpoint, this is what our brand growth has looked like. Today, sales of certified Angus beef outside of the U.S. represent about 15% of our total business. We had this again, the dip with BSE for a few years. We've fully recovered from that. This is growing. Last year we grew 28%. We'll probably do that again this year. We've got just a handful of countries though that really make up a lion's share of that. And the thing that I think is really important here, there's two countries that I highlight. One is Japan, one is South Korea. So great growth numbers, 153% growth for us last year in Japan, not quite the same percentage in South Korea. It's doing it right now. It's triple-digit growth for us right now, this particular year. But something that I've got circled up there is really important, is the cuts that they take are not the cuts, they're not ribeyes. They're not loin, they're not strips, they're not tenderloins, right? They're plate, they're chuck roll, they're short ribs. They're cuts that add, when the demand that they have because of cooking style, because of culinary preferences and the way they have, it creates so much more value and demand on those cuts to go to other markets. So I know I hear sometimes it's like, well, why do we need to ship all the good product over to Japan? The reality is we're sending product over there that we don't use well here, and it just helps add value to the total animal. So we're pretty excited and pretty bullish about what these international markets are going to look like long term. I think the impact it's had on the beef market is incredible. So if you take, again, every week the packers through mandatory price reporting report all of their sales of boxed beef to USDA, and they roll all that up, and you can read that in a bazillion different reports, okay? But I rolled this up and just looked at it by grade, okay? And if you look at the percent of product that we're selling today as choice, the percent of our box sales that are branded and prime, and the percent of our box sales that are select, it may shock you. It did, honestly, me a couple years ago when I really looked at this. You know, we crossed last year, we sold more branded and prime boxes of beef than we did select. Okay, we typically think of select as such a big part of our beef industry. In reality, it's gotten relatively small. Prime and branded from a tonnage standpoint, and for sure a dollar contribution standpoint, have gotten really pretty significant. So I think at times we have a tendency to go, those are those little niche-y things. Those are accidents that are being produced. They're not. They're very intentional, and they're a very important part of the overall beef market. And this is what I think, the improvement that you guys collectively, cattlemen, have made in quality. This is something that I think even as a cow-calf producer you need to be aware of. As we've made this improvement in quality grade, okay, which is a really, really good thing, right? We went for years and years at 54, 55, 56% choice and prime. Look what we've been doing. The last couple of weeks, it's come off a little bit. We were at 82% a handful of weeks ago. We fell all the way to like 78% last week, right? And we go, oh man, grade's falling off. Well, not really in historical terms, okay? But here's why it's important, and I got a lot of numbers up here. But when you think about, so roughly 25% of our fed cattle today are sold on a cash or live basis, roughly. Okay, about 75% are sold on some sort of formula, grids, lots of different formulas or value-based systems. You hear about the choice select spread, okay, and the difference between on a grid, a carcass that is choice, and the difference in select. Here's what's going on, though, that I think we've got to be aware of. As cattle have gotten better, what's happened to, again, you think about the average price is based on a plant average, right? So my example here is, and I used a base carcass price of $1.60. I did this obviously a few months ago. That's like $1.02 live. So that was back in the bad times. The times are better now, but the example works the same, right? So if the plant average is 60% choice, which that's be a pretty normal plant average, and your cattle are 60% choice, okay, then you get that $1.60 base price, right? Does that make sense? So that's how these grids work. But now if the choice select spread is $12, okay, and now your cattle do 100% choice, okay, you get paid for the 40% that exceeded the plant average, right? So 40% of that $12 is $4.80. You add that back to your base price. Now those cattle are worth $1.6480. Okay? You following me? Does that make sense? So when you hear about plan averages, when you hear about the choice select spread, this is how, if you're not finishing your cattle, the folks that are, this is how they're selling them. Okay? So you just need to understand how quality plays in. But here's what's happened. As plan averages have gone up, right? And you may be thinking, you know, those 60% choice cattle that you had, they're not average anymore, right? Now, in fact, they're 10% below the plan average. They're a discount. They're a discount. And so I think it's really important to understand the importance that quality has on the value that your cattle are going to have long term, okay? And I think there's a lot of things as value-based marketing has developed at the fed cattle level. So the way feeders sell to packers, okay, a lot of cattle are sold on some sort of grid where every one of them is assigned a value. What we're seeing on the feeder calf side is we're starting to see that marketplace change. There's players out into that world now today that programs that if you've got, you get genetic scores on your feeder cattle, okay? And again, think about who's going to have the leverage over the next handful of years as calf supplies go up. It's going to be the buyer of those calves. Are they going to be able to be more picky? Absolutely, right? And so if you can document what your genetics are, I think we're going to start to see that marketplace start to separate. We're going to see more programs. I know the American Angus Association is a part of our long-range plan. We're entering that space as well to help develop these feeder calf markets, to help tools for cattlemen that have the better genetics, document those genetics, and we're going to start seeing more price separation occur at the feeder calf level moving forward, all because of some of these changes in the way we sell fed cattle. So with that, I guess as we talk about you know, the brand acceptance and marbling, you know, something to think about. And this is a piece we put together a handful of years ago. It's our a best practices manual. It's back out here at the Angus, the booth. If you have an interest in learning more about the Certified Angus Beef program, kind of maybe some of those best practices that we've picked up over the years, working with other cattlemen on things to do relative to genetics, things to think about as it relates to management on the nutrition side, some ideas around marketing, and we've tried to compile. This is kind of a, you know, the best hits that we've picked up and stolen from folks around the country and put that together. So I'd invite you to stop by the booth and pick that up if you have an interest. So again, with that, I congratulate you on being here. I really, really do. I mean, you paid money to be here, but the biggest investment you made was your time. You guys know that, right? And again, I congratulate you. I applaud you for being here. And if there's ever anything that we can be of assistance with, please hope that you would consider giving us a holler, stopping by our website, and again, we'd love to help you. So with that, Andy, thanks for the opportunity, and again, congratulations.
Let's give Mark a big round of applause.